Everyone, in today's lesson we're going to learn how to create basic textile prints repeated patterns. So first we're going to have a look and learn some of the vocabulary that you are going to need. So first of all, textile prints consist of repeated patterns that are comprised of a single motif that has been repeated over and over. So here's an example of a single motif such as a star, and then you repeat it over and over to create a repeated pattern, which is also called overall print. So your motif does not have to be a single piece, such as a polka dot or a star, but it can be a bunch of elements grouped together that you are going to repeat. So this would be called repeat. So here you can see an example featuring a star, a swirl, a heart, and this is a 5 by 5 inch square, and then this is referred to as my repeat. So the repeat can be any size. It doesn't have to be 5 by 5 inches. It can be any size you want. And again, it can be a single element or multiple element repeated to create your tile or your repeat. So there's many different ways to repeat your design or to repeat your motif. So here you can see straight column. They're all just repeated straight way. And then here is a half drop repeat where you can have a little bit of offset in between the columns. So here they're halfway dropped to create a different variation of your repeat. There's also a two-way motif, so they're using two different ways of them facing in two different directions. You can also have a mirror, swivel mirrors, where they're just mirrored four ways. So they're mirrored up and they're mirrored down and they're mirrored to the left and the right. So as you can see, there's many different ways of repeating a single motif, and there's actually many more that are not pictured here. There's also a border print, such as what you would have on a scarf, and a placement print, for example here on a t-shirt. So here's another example of a basic straight column repeat on this Miu Miu outfit. And then stuff like polka dots, stripes, checks, even floral prints, they're all examples of overall or repeated prints. In Adobe Illustrator, there's a technique called Object Pattern Make, which will allow you to experiment with these different types of repeat, and it's going to be really great and easy for you to use. On the other hand, there's a placement print or engineered print where you have a specific pattern piece, such as the back or the sleeve, and then your print is placed specifically within that shape and it does not repeat. So this McQueen jacket is a good example of that. So you have a specific placement on the sleeve, on the leg, pattern, etc. So here is an example of what that would look like. So here you can see an engineered print carefully placed within the back piece of your pattern, and as you are noticing, the print does not repeat. It's just a specific placement that the designer is using. Mary Cotranzo is quite famous for her prints, and here you can see several examples of her placement prints or engineered prints. So now we can actually start working on different techniques that you can use. Before I go, I just want to mention that there is a prints demo on your Blackboard under course document where you can see step-by-step instructions on how to create prints, different techniques, which I'm going to go over now with you in this video. Okay, so the first thing first is you need to create a motif. So again, a motif could be just a single hexagon in a particular color, or it can be a bunch of elements put together. So in this case, I've created a bunch of elements and then I've grouped them together. You can have as many as you want. It could be anything. It could even be a JPEG. It could be a gradient. You can use a patterned brush. You can use a pencil tool. You can use the brush. If I wanted to use a pattern brush, I would have to go to Window Brushes, and then the brush palette would come up. And then if I wanted to click on the library button here, brush library button, then I can choose any of these artistic borders. There's many different ones. So if I select this one, then I can load a bunch of geometric border brushes. So if I use the brush tool, then I can click on this and I can add another line here, and then I can make it just a little bit thinner. So basically there are no limits. You can use gradient, solid color, and you can even use a pattern brush. The only thing that you cannot use is pre-existing pattern fill. So you cannot use a pre-existing pattern fill to create a new fill. That's not going to work. But you can use JPEG, you can use solid color, gradient, etc. And to draw, you can use the pen tool, shape tools, brush, pencil, anything you want you can use to draw and create your design. Once you're happy with your design, then you just have to group it together. So I'm going to just group it together. And then the simplest way of creating your pattern is to simply just select your design with a black arrow, and then click and drag the pattern over on top of the swatches. You're going to see a little plus show up, and then you let go of your dragging. So now you have created that pattern. So in order for you to see what it looks like, you have to put it inside of something. So the best thing to do is to create a really big rectangle all over your page, like that. And then you simply click on your pattern in order to fill this rectangle with your pattern. So there we go, you can see my pattern. So right now, this is the first technique that you can use. Now, this technique makes everything repeated right next to each other. But what if you wanted them to be more spaced apart? So if you wanted them to be more spaced apart, you would have to create a bounding box. So I will show you how that works. So step number one, you would create your design. So let's say I want the same one. Then step number two, I would use no fill and no stroke to create a bounding box using the rectangle. So I'm going to click on the rectangle tool. I have no fill, I have no stroke, and then I'll go further away from my design, and then I will create a box around it. So now what you would do is you would select with a black arrow both your transparent box and the design which is inside, and then you would drag that on top of the swatches palette using the black arrow or the selection tool. So I drag that on top, turns into a plus, I let go. And so now I'm curious to see what that's going to look like. So to see what that's going to look like, I'm going to again make a big rectangle. And then all I have to do is click on my new pattern, and then it's filled with that new fill. So you can see that this new fill has more space in between my designs because I was using the bounding box. So you can use the bounding box if you want them to be further apart from each other. So this is the first example, they're right next to each other. This is the second example, they're further apart from each other. And now I will show you the third way of creating an overall print. So the third way is going to be just using the same design, but let's change it up a little bit so that it looks a little bit different from the ones that I made. So I'm just going to ungroup what I have and just perhaps use a little bit of a different color here so that I can see the difference. And so now let's use this. So I'm going to group this stuff together. And then this is the third technique that I'm going to show you now. So step one, you're going to select this group. You're going to go to Object, Pattern, Make, Object, Pattern, Make. You're going to click on OK, and then you're going to see a preview. So this is really great because you can see the preview already and what it's going to look like. And then this is the pattern options box that you can use to change the settings. So for right now, I can see I have a grid, but you can also try brick by row, see the pattern changing in front of your eyes. You can select text by column, you can select brick by row, brick by column, hex by column, and see it changing on my screen. So there's many different ways you can rearrange these. And then the other thing that's really great is you can actually change the distance between them. So right now I've got 120 points and 110 points. So if I wanted them to be closer together, I would enter a smaller number of points. So let's say instead of 120, why don't I do 90? And then here I'm going to do 90 as well. And so now you can see that they're closer together. So you can change the distance between them, and now they're so close, they're actually starting to overlap. So you can keep changing this, make them closer to each other, further away from each other, and play around with these settings. When you are done with this and you like the preview, you're happy, then all you have to do is just click on done, and then it'll save whatever you've done. So now let's see what that is going to look like. So to see what that looks like, I'm going to make a rectangle as usual all over my page so I can see a big enough sample of my work. And then I will click on my new fill that I just created, and there you go, you can actually see it now. So this is the new print that I have designed, and then this is the third technique that I have here for you. So now if you want to keep these patterns for future use, you would have to save the library. So to save this library of patterns, you're going to click on the library button, save swatches, and then you can call them your name, so Zoran patterns, and then I can save them on my desktop or wherever I want, and then I'm saving them as swatch files AI. Then I will click on save, and then this will save my library. If you go to your desktop, then you should be able to see Zoran patterns are saved here. And then if you're going to load the pattern library that you created, then you're going to click on the library button, and then you're going to click on the other library. So it's at the very bottom, it says other library. And then this will allow you to scroll down and find the Zoran patterns on your desktop, and then you're going to click on open. So then it's going to come up, and it's actually going to say Zoran patterns or whatever your name patterns here. And so this is a good way to save your patterns, but you can even save your own personal color swatches and patterns that you created as well. So the other thing that we're going to learn today is how to do a placement print. So to do a placement print, I have already created an outline of a tank top, and I have already created a placement print. So now your placement print has to be big enough to cover the entire pattern piece. So I could have a sleeve, I could have a collar, and so on, but in this case my pattern is big enough to go inside of this particular tank top. So that's good. So first step, create your design using text, using symbols, using pre-existing patterns, using JPEGs, using whatever you want, really. It can be anything at all, and then you just group that together. Then you're going to take your outline, and then I'm going to just go to move the outline on top. So to make sure that the outline is on top, I'm going to select it and go to Arrange, Bring to Front. This way I know that my outline is on top of my design. So you see now I can sort of zoom in and see if I like the placement of this print, making sure that the hello is included. I can see it. And then with the outline being on top, I can now do a clipping mask to put the print inside. So we've actually done clipping mask in the previous lesson, so it's the same idea. You have the outline on top, it's a closed shape. You have a JPEG or a bunch of drawings underneath, and then you use the black arrow or the selection tool. You select everything by clicking and dragging around it, and then you go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. When you do the clipping mask, you will notice that you are going to lose the outline. So if you wish to see your outline, what you would have to do is select the outline and then give it a black stroke, and you can do a thicker line if you want, let's say 3 points so you guys can see it better. And there I have my outline showing up. If I wanted to create a style detail on top, like a pocket or buttons or whatever else, like top stitching, I can, but I'd have to put it in a separate layer. So I created a new layer, and then I'm just going to create, let's say, like a pocket here, or anything else that you may want to do, like a top stitching or whatever else. It has to be added in a layer on top so that it's easier for you to navigate. So that concludes our demo for the placement print and for the overall print as well. One thing I just want to mention in the end is that when you make these prints, they're kind of transparent, they're see-through, as you can see. And if you were to print this out, it would actually look like it's all white in the background because the paper is white. So if you want your background to be a different color rather than white, what you would have to do is select this rectangle, go to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste in Back, which will paste the rectangle behind this current one. And then all you have to do is select a different color. So now I've selected black. So essentially what I've done is I've just pasted a rectangle behind, and I've turned the fill of the rectangle behind into a black color. So that's how you can change the color if you don't like the white as the original printout would have looked like. So essentially what you have now is two rectangles. One is black and one is with my print, and then the black one is showing through. If this is what you wanted to do, then you would just have to group them together. So this is the basic technique, and in next levels of your CAD class, we're going to learn other techniques that you can use as well. And that's it for this tutorial. Thank you.